My fiancée said, "I'm uninviting your dad. He's embarrassing with his cancer jokes." My dad used humor to cope with a stage 4 diagnosis. I said quietly, "This wedding isn't happening then." I canceled everything that day and spent the money on a trip with my dad instead. When she saw our photos from Ireland, I 32 mail am writing this because I need to get out of my head. And honestly, the silence in my house is starting to feel heavy. I'm an architect living in the Pacific Northwest. I've always been a guy who plans everything: blueprints, timelines, contingencies. But you can't blueprint stage 4 pancreatic cancer. My father was diagnosed 8 months ago. It's aggressive. He's gone from a sturdy, laughing lumberjack of a man to someone frail, yellow-skinned, and constantly tired. But the one thing the cancer didn't eat was his mouth. The man uses dark humor as a shield. It's how he copes. He'll look at a carton of milk and say, "I don't know, son, buying a gallon seems like an optimistic investment for me." It makes people uncomfortable, sure, but it's his way of saying he's not afraid. I laugh because if I don't, I'll scream. My fiancée, let's call her X, never got the joke. She works in high-end PR. Image is her religion. Our wedding was supposed to be the event of the season for her circle. We're talking a $60,000 affair at a vineyard, black tie, highly curated. I was paying for about 80% of it because my career took off earlier than hers, and I wanted her to be happy. The friction started 2 weeks ago. My dad had a bad reaction to chemo and lost the rest of his hair. He looked skeletal. When he came over for dinner, he cracked a joke about saving money on shampoo. X didn't smile. She just stared at his sunken cheekbones with this look of distaste. 3 days ago, we were finalizing the seating chart. She was tapping her stylus on her tablet, frowning. Then she said we needed to move my dad. I looked up from my laptop and asked why, reminding her he's the father of the groom and belongs at the head table. She wouldn't look me in the eye. She said he was distracting. She'd been looking at the rehearsal photos, and apparently, the lighting hits him in a way that makes him look morbid. She said it was going to ruin the aesthetic of the wedding video, and that people would be pity staring at him instead of looking at us. I felt a cold prickle on the back of my neck. I reminded her he has cancer, not leprosy, and that he's dying. She snapped back that she knew that, but asked if he had to be so loud about it. She called the jokes and the coughing depressing. Then she dropped the bomb. She didn't want our wedding photos to look like a hospice brochure. I put my laptop down and asked what she was suggesting. She took a breath and said she thought it was better if he didn't come. She'd already drafted an email to my aunt to explain, so she could stay with him. She wanted to do a special toast to him, so it looked respectful. But she was uninviting him because staring like a skull at the head table was too much. The air left the room. It wasn't just the cruelty. It was the casual entitlement. She was talking about my father, my hero, the man who raised me alone after my mom dipped, like he was a floral arrangement that clashed with the tablecloths. I asked her if she was seriously uninviting my dying father, because he looked sick. She corrected me, saying it was our wedding but her day, and it was for the best. She turned back to her tablet, dismissing me. Discussion over. She actually thought she had the authority to veto my father's presence. She thought I was just an accessory to her pageant. I stood up, walked into the bedroom, grabbed my packed gym bag, and walked back out. She asked where I was going and said we needed to pick the playlist. I told her quietly that there is no playlist because the wedding isn't happening. She laughed, a short, sharp sound, and told me not to be dramatic, blaming my emotions on the chemo news. She told me to go for a drive and cool off. I told her I wasn't being dramatic. I was being clear. If my dad isn't welcome, I'm not there. And since I'm paying for the venue, the catering, and the band, there is no wedding. I walked out the door. I drove straight to my dad's place. He was awake, watching an old Western. He looked at me, saw the look on my face, and paused the TV, asking if there was trouble in paradise. I just said something like that. I didn't tell him the reason. I couldn't break his heart like that. I just sat there and realized that in 6 months, this chair might be empty, and I was wasting time arguing about aesthetics with a woman who saw him as a prop. My phone started blowing up 20 minutes later. Text after text calling me a child. Her mother asking why the coordinator got a cancellation email. demands to pick up the phone. I turned my phone off. That night, I slept on my dad's couch. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity that scared me. I wasn't going back. But X wasn't going to let this go. She was about to show me exactly who she really was. And I needed to be ready for war. I went to the bank the moment it opened at 9 a.m. We had a joint account for household expenses, but my personal savings were separate. Or so I thought. When the teller pulled up the transaction history, I saw a pending transfer initiated at 11:30 p.m. the previous night, 2 hours after I walked out. She had tried to transfer $15,000 from my personal savings into her private account. I told the teller to stop the transfer. They flagged it as suspicious and put it on hold since I hadn't authorized it. I closed the joint account immediately and removed her authorization from everything. While I was signing the papers, my phone, now back on, buzzed with voicemail from her mother. She was screaming about me humiliating her daughter and threatening legal action if I didn't confirm the vendors by noon. They had no idea I was already 10 steps ahead. I didn't go home. I went to my office and started making calls. The venue, the caterer, the florist, the wedding planner was the first shock. She was stressed about the cancellation, but said we needed to discuss the outstanding balance on the upgrades. I was confused because I had signed off on the budget 2 months ago, and everything was paid for. She listed imported orchids, a platinum champagne package, and an additional guest suite for the VIP. My blood ran cold. I asked for the invoices. When the email pinged, I saw red. Over the last month, X had forged my digital signature to add $12,000 worth of upgrades. But the kicker was the VIP suite. It was booked under the name of a guy I'll call Mark. Mark was her work husband, the guy she told me not to worry about, the guy she swore was just a mentor. She had booked him an $800 a night suite on my dime for 3 nights, while trying to kick my dying father out of reception. I realized then that this wasn't just about my dad's jokes. She wanted the wedding, the status, and the party, but she was already checking out of the marriage before it began. She wanted me to pay for her to party with Mark. I called my lawyer. Then I went to the house. I knew she would be there. I brought my brother as a witness because I wasn't stupid. In Washington state, recording laws require 2-party consent, so I needed a witness for anything she said or did. She was in the kitchen, drinking wine at 11 a.m., looking furious. Her mother was there too, sitting at the island like a gargoyle. X didn't even look up from her phone, just demanded I fix it because the florist was threatening to sell our arrangement. I told her calmly that I canceled the florist, the venue, and the caterer. Her mother stood up yelling that invitations went out months ago and people had booked flights. I said I'd reimburse the guests for their travel fees personally, but there was no wedding. X walked up to me, getting in my face, accusing me of destroying her life because my dad is an embarrassment and calling me a petty, weak man. I told her I was canceling the wedding because she tried to steal $15,000 from me last night. Her face went pale. Then I threw the printed invoice on the counter and added that I knew about the suite from Mark. She stammered that Mark was helping with the press release for the wedding and was a guest. I pointed out he's an ex-boyfriend, and she booked him a room better than the one she booked for my parents. I told her we were done. I own the house. I bought it before we met, and my name is on the deed. I handed her a formal 30-day notice to vacate. This is where the entitlement went nuclear. She screamed and threw a glass of wine at me, missed, hit the wall. She started yelling about tenants' rights and claimed that by promising to marry her, I had entered a verbal contract to support her lifestyle. She shrieked that she gave up her lease for me and that if I didn't reinstate the wedding, she'd sue me for emotional distress and promissory estoppel because her dad knows judges. I reminded her that her dad is a dentist and that promissory estoppel doesn't apply when the plaintiff commits fraud and attempts theft. I told her the bank has the logs of her IP address trying to access my savings, which is a felony. Her mother changed tactics instantly, playing the victim, saying I was clearly having a mental break and was being abusive by cornering them. My brother stepped forward with his phone, stating he wasn't recording but was witnessing and that nobody was cornering them. I told X I was staying at a hotel that night and that she had until the weekend to get her essentials out. I warned her that if she damaged anything, I would press charges of the theft I stopped yesterday. I walked out again. But I wasn't just going to sit in a hotel room and mope. I had a significant chunk of money coming back to me. While the deposits were gone, the venue and catering had cancellation clauses that refunded about 60% if canceled more than 14 days out. That was roughly $45,000 hitting my account. I drove back to my dad's. He was looking at a map of the world he kept on his wall. He pointed at Ireland and muttered that he always wanted to have a pint in Dingle, but never made it. I looked at him. He was weak. Yes, but he was mobile. His doctor had said travel was risky, but possible if we took precautions. I told him to pack a bag. He asked if it was for the hospital. I said no. We're going to Ireland, first class, leaving in 2 days. He asked about the wedding. I told him it was canceled. The money was ours now, and I wasn't spending it on a party for a woman who hates him. I was spending it on a pint in Dingle. He started to cry, heaving shoulder-shaking sobs. While I was booking the tickets, X was busy. She went on Facebook and wrote a massive post about how I had abandoned her due to mental instability and was financially abusing her by kicking her out. She didn't mention the cancer. She didn't mention Mark. She painted herself as the martyr. Mutual friends started blowing up my phone, calling me a monster. Even my cousin texted me saying I couldn't just kick her out. She thought she could shame me into submission. She was wrong. I wasn't going to fight her on Facebook. I was going to fight her with the truth. The next 48 hours were a blur. I hired a moving company to pack my personal valuables and put them in storage so she couldn't accidentally break them. I hired a security patrol to drive by the house. X tried one last dirty trick. She refused to leave the house, claiming she had established residency and that my notice was invalid. She changed the locks. I called the police non-emergency line. Since my name is on the deed and she is a tenant at will who had been served, she cannot legally lock me out of my own primary residence. I called a locksmith and asked for a civil standby from the police. I arrived with a locksmith and 2 officers. She opened the door looking smug until she saw the cops. The officer explained that it's my house and I can come in. I walked in. The house was a mess. Wedding favors were piled everywhere. She had destroyed the framed photo of my parents in the hallway. Glass shattered on the floor. I told the officer I was pressing charges for destruction of property and documenting it for the security deposit deduction. She screamed that she hated me and that I chose a dying old man over her. I turned to her and said, every single time, I'd choose him every single time. Then I asked for the ring back. She yelled it was a gift. I cited Washington state law. It's a conditional gift based on marriage occurring. No marriage, no ring. I told her she could give it to me now, or I could sue her for it plus legal fees. She threw the ring at me. It bounced off my chest. I picked it up, pocketed it, and left. The next morning, Dad and I were at SeaTac Airport. I used the refund money to book lay-flat pods. Dad had never flown first class. When they brought him the warm nuts and the champagne, he looked at me and grinned, his face gaunt but his eyes bright. He said he could get used to this and might stick around a few more years just for the miles. We landed in Dublin and rented a comfortable SUV. We drove south. We didn't rush. If he was tired, we stopped. We ate fish and chips in small coastal towns. We listened to traditional music. For 10 days, I didn't check social media. I didn't check my email. I just watched my dad come alive. The sea air seemed to do something for him. He wasn't cured. The pain was still there, but the weight of being the sick guy fell off. On the 5th day, we were in Dingle. We found a small pub, Dick Mac's. It was authentic, smelling of wood and history. I ordered 2 Guinnesses. Dad took a sip, foam on his lip, and closed his eyes, whispering heaven. I took a photo. Just him, the pint, the old wooden bar, and a genuine smile on his face. He looked frail. Yes, his skin was paper thin, but he looked happy. I decided to break my silence. I posted the photo to Instagram and Facebook. No long rant, no defense, just a caption. My ex-fiancée said my dad was too embarrassing and morbid to be at our wedding. She wanted to uninvite him to save the aesthetic. So I canceled the wedding and took him to Ireland instead. Best $60,000 I ever spent. Cheers, Dad. I put the phone away and ordered another round. I didn't know it then, but back home, the internet was doing what the internet does. The post went viral within hours. My ex, who had been painting herself as the victim, was suddenly flooded with screenshots of my post. People who knew us started connecting the dots. Then came the X factor. Remember Mark? Well, it turns out Mark had a girlfriend who saw my post, saw the comments, and decided to do some digging. She found the venue reservation receipt. I had posted in a follow-up story showing the VIP suite booked for Mark. Mark's girlfriend dumped him publicly. X tried to backtrack, claiming I was lying, but then my cousin, the one who called me cold, commented on her post saying he saw the text where she called my dad a skeleton. The house of cards collapsed. We returned home 2 weeks later. The fallout was nuclear. X had moved out 3 days early because she couldn't handle the neighbors staring at her. She left the place relatively clean, mostly because she knew I had the police on speed dial. She tried to email me a long apology letter full of I was stressed and bridal anxiety. She asked if we could talk because she was having financial trouble after losing the apartment and needing to pay back deposits to her friends. I didn't reply. I forwarded it to my lawyer. The legal loose ends were tied up quickly because I had receipts of the fraud attempt and the clear paper trail of the conditional ring. She had no leg to stand on. She threatened to sue for the venue deposits that were non-refundable, but my lawyer pointed out that since she breached the contract by engaging in infidelity, emotional or otherwise, and attempted theft, we would countersue for the entire cost of the wedding planning. She went silent. My dad lived for 4 more months. They were good months. We spent weekends looking at the photos from Ireland. He blew up that picture from the pub and hung it in his living room. He'd say, "That was a good day," every time he walked past it. He died peacefully in his sleep on a Tuesday. I was with him. The last thing he said to me wasn't a joke. It was, "You're a good man. Don't let anyone make you feel bad for doing the right thing." At his funeral, the church was packed. People didn't talk about how sick he looked. They talked about his humor. They talked about Ireland. Accent flowers. I had the funeral director put them in the trash behind the church. Petty? Maybe. But I don't want flowers from a person who wanted to hide them away. I'm sitting in my house now. The wedding money is gone. Between the non-refundable deposits I lost and the cost of the trip, the account is pretty much drained. I'm actually paying off a bit of debt from the legal fees. But I don't care. I realize that marriage isn't about the party or the aesthetic. It's about who is standing next to you when the world gets dark. She wasn't that person. And for anyone wondering, yes, I kept the ring. I sold it last week. I took the money and donated it to the hospice center that took care of Dad in his final weeks. They're going to buy new TVs for the patient rooms, so the next old guy can watch his westerns in peace. I think Dad would have found that funny.